over 80 years our government knew there were people who carried a truth officials believed the world wasn't ready to face. People who saw what others weren't allowed to see. People who lived with experiences that didn't fit inside the boundaries of acceptable reality. They weren't scientists or soldiers, they weren't insiders with clearance or access. They were ordinary people, until something extraordinary happened to them.
Yes, I think I may have seen a UFO. I know it sounds crazy, but it was huge. It wasn't a plane and it wasn't...
And instead of listening, the system chose silence. Instead of investigation, it chose denial. Instead of acknowledging the witnesses, it buried them under ridicule, stigma, and the word impossible. But the truth didn't disappear. It lived inside the people who experienced it. It lived in their memories, their scars, their sleepless nights, and the moments they could never explain away. This is their story. Not the government's version. Not the sanitized disclosure. The real one, the one carried by the people who were never supposed to speak. This is the experiencer. They always talk about the experiencers like they're a category, a demographic, a mere curiosity. But it never begins that way. It begins with a moment so small you almost dismiss it. A detail that shouldn't matter. But it refuses to leave. A sound that doesn't belong. A light that behaves like it has intent. A memory that stays sharper than any of the ones around it. For most people, events blur with time. But for experiencers, the moment of contact becomes fixed, as if something beyond your control decides, this part stays. And that's where my story begins. Not with a craft. Or a visitation. It didn't start with anything dramatic. It began with a pattern. A pattern I didn't recognize at the time. Something I wasn't supposed to notice. A sequence of events that would follow me for the rest of my life. Because before I saw anything, before I ever understood what was happening, the phenomenon was studying me. It watched me react. It listened to my questions. It sees what you ignore. And then, when it knows you're ready, it steps out of the background. That was the moment everything shifted. The moment the ordinary world cracked just enough for the truth to slip through. It began with a moment so small it faded from memory. A pattern long held, but I didn't recognize it at the time. This was the moment. The moment the ordinary world cracked and began to fade into the unknown. This was the moment my experiences with the unknown began. When we moved to Kansas City, the phenomenon didn't stay behind. It moved too. It wasn't loud or dramatic, it was simply present. Like it had been tracking me long before I ever understood what it was. It started the same way it always does, subtle. Objects flying in slow circles outside a window. Shapes that behaved like they were studying the house, not passing by. And then there were the nights. The ones where I woke up convinced I was dreaming, my body had been raised off the bed. I laid there weightless, and it felt as if someone was examining me from a place I couldn't see. I told myself I was asleep and that this was a dream. New Year's Eve 2008, into 2009. I went outside to record the transition into New Year's Day. It was almost midnight, the start of a new year. I didn't expect anything unusual. I raised the camera and saw a light just above the tree in my neighbor's yard and began recording. It was close, too close. About 6 feet from the ground, it suddenly faded. My camera also lost power. I went back inside. I didn't know it then, but that short clip would become the first piece of evidence I ever investigated. There was a lot happening that I tried to ignore. And pretending it wasn't real didn't help. If anything, it made the experiences sharper. I kept capturing photos and video. Images of orbs, shapes that looked like floating heads, colorful sprites, and what some referred to as rods. I saved everything. Not because I understood it, but because I didn't. I didn't know what any of it meant. I didn't know why it was happening. And I didn't know who to talk to about it. At this point I was both nervous and excited. So, I reached out to organizations that claimed to know something about this phenomenon. People who claimed they could investigate it. People who claimed they could help. I started with Peter Davenport at the National UFO Reporting Center. I sent him a detailed report, the time, the altitude, the behavior, the way the craft dimmed its lights as if it knew it was being watched. His reply was procedural. He asked about the time. He compared it to the ISS flyover schedule. But I knew what I saw. I verified the time immediately afterward. I told him that. I offered photos. I sent one. I asked him what he thought. I wasn't looking for attention. I was looking for understanding. I reached out to everyone I thought might take this seriously. I spoke with someone at SETI, MUFON International, and both the Kansas and Missouri MUFON chapters. I even managed to get a hold of the assistant director for MUFON in Missouri. I sent photos, 4 different objects. I explained the increase in activity. I tried to show them what was happening, not just describe it. Some people responded. Some didn't. A few were curious. A few were dismissive. But none of them seemed to understand the position I was in, the urgency, the scale, or the fact that this wasn't a single sighting. It was something unfolding around me in real time. I worked at an envelope manufacturing plant downtown. It was June 27, 2010. I was driving home, and as I pulled into the driveway, I got an urge to go up on the roof. I'd been seeing unusual objects for a while, but this felt different. It felt like I was being guided to go up there. I went inside, grabbed 2 cameras, a blanket, and a ladder, then headed out to the deck. I set the ladder, secured my gear, climbed up, laid out the blanket, and kept one camera close while the other stayed strapped over my shoulder. I sat there for 5 to 7 minutes. Nothing happened. I started feeling silly, sitting there waiting for something to show up. I decided to pack up and go back inside. The moment I stood, the sky changed. It shifted to a dark bluish green, then a deeper green. And out of nowhere, a circular ball of light appeared. I raised the camera and started filming. What I captured didn't look like anything I'd seen before. The glow, the shape, it was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. The sky shifted without warning. The whole horizon washed into a strange greenish blue glow, like the atmosphere itself was reacting to something I couldn't see. Then the circular craft appeared, not approaching, not descending, not emerging from cloud cover. It was just there, as if it stepped out from nowhere. One moment the sky was empty, and the next it wasn't. But it wasn't alone. Something else was moving north, almost completely invisible. I couldn't see the craft itself, only its effect. As it trekked forward, the larger circular craft picked up a perfect mirror image reflection of it across its outer shell. That reflection was the only way to tell the second craft existed at all. Then, as the larger craft held its course, the smaller one peeled off, veering west like it had a separate destination entirely. At first, the footage didn't reveal anything. It was just a strange few seconds I couldn't make sense of. I asked associates, friends, family, even total strangers, to help decipher it, but no one could tell me what I was looking at. Eventually I tossed the SD card in a drawer and forgot about it. A couple years later, when I found it again, something changed. I began to notice movement around and inside the sphere that I hadn't seen before. Subtle motion. Patterns. Behavior. Details that weren't obvious the first time I viewed it. That discovery became the foundation for a completely new approach, a new way of understanding UFOs. Those few seconds didn't matter because of what they showed in the moment. They mattered because of what they revealed later, once I finally knew how to look. The people I contacted were looking for simple sightings, something easy to categorize, something that fit neatly into the boxes they already understood. My experiences didn't fit any of that. Whenever I tried to show them something layered or complex, the reaction was predictable: shrink it down, force it into a familiar explanation, treat it like it had to match something conventional. And when it didn't, they moved on. That was the turning point. I stopped relying on outside interpretations and waiting for someone to tell me what I was seeing. From that moment on, I began building my own understanding, piece by piece. People use words like blurry, distorted, or unclear as if those descriptions automatically make the footage meaningless. But that reaction only makes sense when you're comparing something to a familiar object: a plane, a drone, a balloon, something you already understand. With the unknown, that logic doesn't apply. There is no point of reference, no baseline, no known object, condition, or event to measure it against. So, calling it blurry doesn't tell you anything about what it is. It only tells you something about the viewer, about the limits of their expectations, not the limits of the phenomenon. Once I understood that, everything changed. The footage wasn't failing to be clear, it was showing me something that didn't fit into any familiar category. And that meant I had to learn how to see it differently. This part of the footage became important for a different reason. Most people look at UFO evidence the same way they look at everyday objects. If it's blurry, distorted, or unclear, they assume it has no value. But that reaction only works when you're dealing with something familiar, something you can compare to a known object, a known condition, or a known event. But, with the unknown, that logic breaks down. When there's no point of reference, clarity isn't the only thing that matters. Other elements stand out immediately. Colors that won't blend or mix, a color that doesn't belong, a shape that shouldn't exist, or they're in the wrong place or element. Movement that's out of position, or light behaving in a way that isn't natural or looks manufactured in ways that can't be explained. Even in blurry footage, those details are unmistakable. That's why observation matters more than appearance. Looking focuses on what's missing and what's added that shouldn't be there. Observing focuses on what's present or what should be. Once I understood that difference, the footage stopped being confusing and started becoming meaningful. The details were always there, I just had to learn how to see them. That's it for this episode of Hidden. If you want to follow the investigation as it continues, subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode.